Some more mind-boggling stories now from Emily in the press review. It's a mind-boggling update, really, from the Africa Cup of Nations, isn't it, Emily?
Many minds are boggling around the world, and especially in Senegal, as they've just been stripped of their AFCON title. Absolutely crazy news. Of course, Morocco been named AFCON champions in their place. This is the front page of Le Soleil, a Senegalese paper. It calls it the joke of the century. We can have a look at Libération as well, not the French paper, but the Senegalese daily here. They call it ridicule, ridiculous. Of course, the African Football Confederation has stripped, as I said, Senegal's title and reduced a number of fines against Moroccan players 2 months after the final actually happened. Le Dakarois, another Senegalese daily, has a photo of some of the chaos from that final here, when the Senegalese team famously walked off the pitch protesting some of the referee decisions. And although the team eventually came back after around 15 minutes of stoppage time, then later won the final 1-0. CAF's appeal board has now decided that Senegal were declared to have forfeited the final by walking off and have now automatically been given a 3-0 win over Senegal. Now, the Ghanaian site Le Jelly here says it's quite simply scandalous. It calls it a disproportionate decision, quotes, especially since it appears to be the result of blackmail and constant pressure from Morocco. Now, if there's outrage in Senegal and in the Ghanaian press as well, the mood in Morocco, as you can imagine, is slightly more relaxed and happy. This is the Moroccan site 360. It talks about the celebrations happening last night under the reign of Casablanca. The paper says that CAF has, quotes, saved African football from the grip of unsportsmanlike conduct. Now, there's also a column in 360, that same site here, by the head of the African Athletics Organisation, who explains that African football suffers from a structural problem, quote, inconsistency in the application of the rules, with certain decisions appearing dictated more by political balances than by the football rulebook.
And Emily, we'll talk a lot more about that, in fact, in our next news, in around about an hour's time, so stay with us for that. Let's move on to one of our top stories, the top story today, really, the war in the Middle East. Plenty of coverage, of course. One exclusive in The Guardian that Emily wants to point out this morning.
Yeah, particularly interesting article in The Guardian here. As you said, an exclusive discussing Jonathan Powell, the UK's national security advisor. He attended the US-Iran talks in Geneva in late February. Now, most importantly, Powell judged that Tehran's offer during those negotiations had been significant enough to prevent a war in the Middle East. Now, this is important because it's the first time that we know how closely the UK was involved in those negotiations, and also because it explains in part the UK government's reluctance to back the US attacks on Iran. Now, the UK considered the attack on Iran as unlawful because Powell believed diplomatic channels were still open, especially on the issue of UN inspections of Iran's nuclear sites. Now, the paper says that the British team expected the next round of negotiations to go ahead. Those were scheduled for the 2nd of March in Vienna. Of course, those talks never happened because the US and Israel attacked Iran 2 days before that deadline.
Something different. New York Times has published an in-depth investigation into the link between the US and Mexican drug cartels.
Yes, well, we hear a lot about drugs being smuggled from Mexico into the US, but the New York Times is looking at weapons being smuggled from the US back into Mexico. It's a long read in the New York Times. It takes a deep dive into this booming business of smuggling firearms through the US-Mexico border. Now, interestingly, the paper says that the number of orders from Mexico has doubled since Trump's second term and his crackdown on cartels. Weapons are mostly sold in American gun shops and also, interestingly, on online websites and through phone apps like WhatsApp, for example, and they're then funneled through to Mexican cartels, in particular the Sinaloa cartel. So the way that these weapons make it through the border is they're stripped for parts and then concealed in hidden compartments of vans or lorries, sometimes taped onto the drivers and hidden under jumpers, for example. And this paper says that as many as 1 million weapons could be smuggled from the US into Mexico every year.
And finally from Emily, from the US to the UK now, the art world's worst kept secret has just been revealed.
Yes, this is, of course, the big secret about Banksy's identity that has just been revealed. Or not quite, if you believe the Times. The Times here today talking about the fact that Banksy's identity has actually been known since the early 2000s. According to the paper, he's, quote, a short-sighted bloke from Bristol called Robin. Now, his name is actually Robin Gunningham, to be precise, and we have a photo of him here. This one was taken in 2004, and this is a more recent photo of him on the site of one of his paintings. The paper says that the reason that this news is now news is because of the methodology used by Reuters, who revealed this new identity. They managed to figure out that Robin Gunningham had changed his name in 2008 to David Jones to be less detectable, and David Jones's visa records coincided with paintings springing up around the world. The question now, according to the paper, is this the end of Banksy? Now, the Wall Street Journal doesn't think so, according to this article. It explains that although his anonymity helped the street artist move undetected, it did make art collectors uneasy. And now they know who he is, the artwork is going to sell for a lot more. It's also an opinion shared by Sky News here today. The paper says that the fact that he's been revealed as an ordinary man, or as a short-sighted bloke from Bristol, will only add to his legacy as the artist of the people.
I think they're right. The legacy will be added to. Emily, thanks a lot. Emily Ball there with the papers here on France 24. A lot more coming up to